Madam President, there's a wonderful guy who lives in Maine named David Mallet. He has a keen ear and an eye for the rural parts of our country, and one of his most famous songs starts out like this: inch by inch, row by row, gonna make this garden grow. All it takes is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground. The problem is, what we have now is we have rakes, hoes, and a piece of fertile ground. We have seeds, we have crops, but we have an administration that ties the hands of our farmers at every turn, particularly the blueberry farmers in Maine. Now, blueberries have been exported from Maine since the 1840s, and the people who are in this farming business are tough, they're resilient, they don't want bailouts, they want to be able to sell their product on the market. And it's a wonderful product, by the way. If you ever have an opportunity to choose between blueberries and wild blueberries, choose wild blueberries. They're better for you and they taste better. But in recent years, the market for blueberries has been very difficult because of imports from Canada and additional cultivated blueberries from around the country. So our farmers, being entrepreneurial and doing what we have been telling them to do for years, have gone big time into the export market. Where's a great place to export? China. I used to say as governor, if we could get the Chinese hooked on blueberry muffins, just one a day, all of our problems would be over. And the Maine wild blueberries were getting to that point. 2 years ago, $2.5 million a year of blueberries were going to China, and half of the budget of the export commission, Wild Blueberry Export Commission, was going to develop the Chinese market. Hours and hours, days, dollars, a lot of effort went to develop this Chinese market, and then all of a sudden came the Trump administration tariffs. Not surprisingly, it seems surprising to the administration, but not surprising to anybody that's paid attention to 500 years of trade, the immediate response to those tariffs was retaliatory tariffs by the Chinese, and one of the first ones was an 80% tariff on wild blueberries. We were doing pretty well. In 2014 to 2017, exports to China quadrupled, $2.5 million. This year, $61,000. So, we have the trade war, we have tariffs, and it's well known that we have tariffs that are applying to all kinds of agricultural products. So what's been the response of the administration? A massive bailout. A bailout which has now reached something like 3 times the dollar value of the bailout of the automobile industry back at the beginning of the Obama administration, when we almost lost that entire industry. We're now heading toward 3 times the amount, and a lot of the bailout to the automobile industry was paid back. This is not a bailout that's going to be paid back. It's continued to be just paid out to various farmers across the country. Now, farmers, and I'm sure the farmers in the Midwest, just as the farmers in Maine, don't want bailouts. They want sales. They want to sell their product in the market, which they have been doing. But what's happened is we've got this bailout, and I call it the Farm Bailout Lottery. I don't have a spinner on here, but it's a lottery, because we don't know and we don't understand, and nobody can tell us why certain crops are in and certain crops are out. Round and round she goes. Where she stops, nobody knows, and that's the problem. What's in? Well, let's see. Cranberries are in. Blueberries are out. Zip, zero, nothing. Soybeans are in. Wheat's in. Apples are in. Here's what else is in. And tell me if this makes any sense. Dairy, hogs, almonds, cranberries, ginseng, grapes, cherries, all these are in. These are getting the bailout money. Some farms over $500,000. Hazelnuts, macadamia nuts, pecans, pistachios, and walnuts, but not blueberries. And for some reason, not apples. So we've got a double whammy here on this proud industry from Maine. First, the Chinese tariff war, of which we are collateral damage. And by the way, the same problem is going on with lobsters. They were one of the first products to be retaliated against by the Chinese. We've lost that export market. And now the same thing is happening in these agricultural products. So it's a double whammy. Number one, we got hit by the retaliatory tariffs. And number two, we're not in on the bailout. We're not in on the funds that are being distributed. Nobody can tell us what the formula is, what the rationale is. Is it who has the biggest, most powerful lobby in Washington? Is it if you're from a state that voted for the president in 2016? What's the rationale? And we can't tell what that is. Now, the president just said yesterday this trade war with China may go on for another year. That means another crop. That means people, we have third and fourth generation blueberry farmers in Maine leaving the land. It's heartbreaking. These aren't big enterprises. These aren't big operations. These are people with 100-acre farms. Now, the administration knows about this because I and my colleagues from Maine wrote them in July and asked this question. Wild blueberries should be included in what's called the Market Facilitation Program. Didn't happen. And we still don't really know what the criteria is. Just to put a fine point on it, if you're a wild blueberry harvester with a 100-acre farm, you get zip, zero, nada, zilch. If you're a cranberry farmer with a 100-acre barren, you get $61,000. How is that fair? How is the distinction made? That's the question that we're asking. I've written again today to the Department of Agriculture, asking them, A, why we aren't in, and B, how these distinctions are made. I don't think that's an unreasonable question when you're talking about people's livelihoods going back generations. These are tough people. These are resilient people. These are hardworking people. These are people that have given their lives to the land. And they deserve to be supported by their government, not undermined, not challenged, not undercut by their government. Row by row, inch by inch, going to make this garden grow. All it takes is a rake and a hoe and a piece of fertile ground and a government that supports your right to make a living at your chosen profession. Thank you, Madam President. I yield the floor.